This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at Students for Sensible Drug Policy, the most effective agents of change in the world of drug and marijuana policy reform. Join up, donate to, or just learn more over at ssdp.org. That's ssdp.org. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Wednesday, November 8th, 2017, and you're tuned in to episode 369 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day is the fantastic day that marijuana had at the ballot box yesterday, as a number of pro-cannabis politicians and measures were elected and passed in cities and states across the nation. In New Jersey, Democratic gubernatorial candidate Phil Murphy won handily on a platform that promised, among other things, to quickly move to legalize adult-use marijuana. With a ready and willing legislature ready to take up that promise, things are looking good in the Garden State for cannabis. In Detroit, 2 ballot measures were passed by city voters that will expand the number of locations medical marijuana dispensaries can open up in. And in Virginia, Democrat Ralph Northam handily defeated President Trump's pick, Republican Ed Gillespie. Mr. Northam is the state's current lieutenant governor and is on record as being in favor of legalizing medical marijuana. Swing over to Marijuana Business Daily for more details on the day. Jumping out west to California, we have State Treasurer John Chang making a raft of recommendations yesterday for how his state should help its legal marijuana industry gain access to business banking services. One of the suggestions, which I've reported on before, is that California should form a government-owned bank to handle legal marijuana business. He also wants his state to join up with other legal cannabis states to further lobby the federal government to lift its restrictions on marijuana business banking, which would solve a lot of current problems right from the get-go. Swing over to the LA Times for more on this and for a link to the Treasurer's full report. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Our final top story of the day is a piece published on CNN highlighting a recently released study finding that most commercially available CBD medical marijuana products are badly labeled in terms of the percentage of CBD and other cannabinoids found within. Researchers from the University of Pennsylvania ordered 84 different CBD products online and then ran analyses on their cannabinoid contents. They found that only 31% were correctly labeled, with 43% having more CBD than posted and 26% having less. In addition, they also detected THC in 18 out of the 84 samples tested. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Students for Sensible Drug Policy. Our industry is unique in a lot of ways, but especially so for how much we depend on the work of activist groups like SSDP. Put simply, if it weren't for organizations like Students for Sensible Drug Policy, legal marijuana wouldn't exist. Besides making the world a better place, SSDP's efforts open up new markets. That's why it should be an easy decision for anyone in this industry to support them with your hard-earned money. A donation to SSDP is the right thing to do and should be seen as an investment into new markets and business opportunities. Swing over to ssdp.org to sign up as a monthly contributor or to learn more about how to start or join a chapter at your college, should you be a student. Once again, that's ssdp.org. All right, time for the Blitz. The Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission is requesting a total of $7.5 million in funding to pay for its operations through June 30th. The commission has already been given $2.3 million, with the rest being needed to fund the work of developing and implementing rules and regulations for adult use and medical sales. Of the total, around half will be used to build systems for tracking cannabis seed to sale, one for business licensing, and another for tracking revenue, with the remaining amount going towards staffing, office space, and other regular businessy expenses. The request was sent to the office of Governor Charlie Baker and must be approved via a supplementary budget bill by the state legislature. Turning up to my corner of the country in Maine, state Republicans are saying that they'll keep up their obstructionist ways until the proposed legislation governing our adult use commercial marijuana system are modified. Republican House Minority Leader and Paul LePage lackey Ken Fredette said that unless a number of concessions were made on the bill, some of which aren't actually possible to do, his party would keep their thumbs down on the will of the people. One of the things that Fredette wants to see is a tougher stance on driving under the influence of cannabis, which we all know now isn't actually possible to do in a way that's scientifically sound. Representative Teresa Pierce, who co-chaired the legislative committee that worked for months on the bill Governor LePage vetoed last week, said that most of the items on Fredette's list that aren't actually impossible to deliver were discussed in great depth during committee work. She told the Portland Press Herald, quote, "We have worked on this bill for months, brought in experts from Maine and around the country to talk about these issues, and debated them until we reached consensus on them. To say in the 11th hour that we haven't addressed them, to suggest he is bringing up things that we haven't thought of, haven't worked through, it's very frustrating. Where was he in May? Where was he in July? Doesn't he talk to his committee members?" Unquote. Yesterday, a county commissioner in Illinois announced a plan to put the question of legalizing adult-use marijuana to the voters in March in a statewide election. Cook County Commissioner John Fritchie put out a statement that said, quote, "Legalizing, regulating, and taxing recreational marijuana in Illinois is long overdue. Polls have shown that Cook County voters, who make up 40% of the Illinois population, are very supportive of the idea. I want voters to have a direct opportunity to have their voices heard as the debate on this issue in Springfield continues." Unquote. We'll pick back up on this one as it develops. Yesterday, during a meeting of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors Rules Committee, a number of amendments were passed concerning the city's adult use marijuana system. We've touched on this story a number of times in the past few weeks. At yesterday's meeting, amendments were passed to give flexibility to marijuana business owners to move locations of their stores to allow for small-scale producers to expand from home operations to larger commercial space, as well as one that would let dispensaries open up space for their customers to smoke in. Supervisor Malia Cohen introduced 3 amendments, 2 of which would build on her social equity program, protecting people with federal cannabis charges from being excluded as business license holders, and another that would require people enrolled in the social equity program to have spent at least 5 years attending a school in the city. All amendments must be taken up and passed by the Board of Supervisors at large, which will meet again later this month. This is another one we'll be circling back on. Jumping across the country to Rhode Island, we find the state's top medical marijuana regulator telling a legislative committee that he wasn't sure how neighboring Massachusetts' adult-use marijuana market will impact Rhode Island's medical market. Norman Bierenbaum told the 19-member legislative committee tasked with studying the idea of legalizing adult-use cannabis that the exact effects of having legal adult use just over the border were, quote, "a moving target." Another question that the committee touched on was how the state could test whether someone was too impaired to drive. James McDonald, the state health department's chief administrative officer, said that there isn't yet a way to quantifiably determine if someone's too impaired by cannabis use to drive. CBS Denver has a good story up about the difficulty Colorado cannabis companies have in finding nonprofit organizations willing to accept donations of their time and money. While most nonprofits are choosing to eschew cannabis dollars and volunteers, CBS Denver found one organization that is welcoming the help with open arms. The Gathering Place provides meals to folks in need, as well as drop-in daytime services for women, children, and transgender people, and has eagerly welcomed legal marijuana volunteers and donations. Not a bad one to open up for the full read. And finally for today, we look north to Canada, where yesterday Manitoba's premier released details for how his province intends to implement adult-use marijuana next summer, as the nation is set to do. Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister is choosing not to follow in the path of provinces like Ontario, which are nationalizing their entire cannabis sales program, but instead is opting to embrace the private sector for the dispensing of cannabis that will be produced and distributed by government-run monopolies. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at MJTodayDaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, SSDP, and to all of our awesome Patreon listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the Patreon listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says, Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today.
One take, Shay. One take.